Welcome to the Geneva Graduate Institute Events Rewind, your passport to global discourse from the heart of international Geneva. Brought to you by the Geneva Graduate Institute. Join us for insightful event recordings covering diverse subjects from around the world. Experience captivating discussions and insights from professors, thought leaders, experts, and visionaries from around the globe. This is the Geneva Graduate Institute Events Rewind, where diverse perspectives converge for meaningful exchange.
Good afternoon to all of you. Dear Amandeep, welcome back to the Institute, to your former home. Dear members of the High-Level Advisory Board on AI, Your Excellencies, dear students, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Institute. On the occasion of the visit to Geneva of the High-Level Advisory Board on AI to present and to discuss its interim report, we're delighted to be able to organize at the Institute this event, which will be an event in two parts. Until 4 p.m., abroad, 4:15 p.m. abroad, open and public discussion, and just following upon that first event, a time that will be reserved for exchange with our students, and in particular with our students following the course on digital and emerging technologies in international relations, a course that is offered in the context of our interdisciplinary or MINT program, and with the students also who are working on applied research projects or capstone projects around the question of AI, with a number of our organizational partners here in international Geneva. Over the last 4 years, we've made the technological transition one of our 4 strategic themes and orientations at the Institute. The other 3 are: 1, peace; 2nd, sustainability, environmental and social, hence including justice; and 3rd, the future of multilateralism, or rather multilateralism for the future; and 4th, the technological transition. Why should an institute like ours, a social science university with a focus on international affairs, identify the technological transition as one of its core priorities? Well, first, because technology is a human and social construct and tool. Technology is neither natural nor neutral. It is framed, and it frames in turn. Technology reveals, expresses, and reflects the social, economic, political, geopolitical, but also ethical conditions of a particular time in the history of humanity. In a circular and dynamic kind of manner, it in turn also shapes and transforms the social, economic, political, geopolitical, and even ethical conditions that structure what we do and even who we are. And today, those reciprocal interactions from the social, political, economic, and ethical to the technological and back increasingly have a global reach and scope. So indeed, an institute like ours should have an important voice on those issues and an important role to play in exploring them. How do we approach technology and the technological transition, including AI and its transformative potential at the Institute? First, we start from the acknowledgement of the Janus face character of technology. In Greek mythology, as you know, Janus is the god with 2 opposed faces. Technology has always had, historically, 2 faces. One as a tool of well-being and improved conditions for human groups or humanity. The other as a tool of destruction, of war, of domination. From fire to AI, going through nuclear fission, technology can bring the best and the worst. One of the important lines of reflection for us at the Institute is, therefore, how do we build social, political, and governance structures that tilt the balance in the right direction? How do we create the conditions that favor tech for good, tech for peace? Here, the question of international governance and rules is obviously particularly important and particularly relevant for us as an institute. Second, acknowledging that Janus nature of technology does not mean, as some people will sometimes hastily conclude, that technology is neutral and that only its use is political, moral, or immoral. Technology being a human and social construct, an artifact, it is in reality eminently political by construction. And the deconstruction of the political, social, economic, and even ethical constituents of the technology being produced is an important dimension of what we are interested in at the Institute. We claim that tech for good, tech for peace is important indeed, but that it is not enough. Technology is like law, it frames, and like law, technology is never neutral, nor purely positive. The framing it creates always reflects a particular vision of the world. Hence, understanding the mechanisms through which this framing happens upstream is certainly of extreme importance, and that is indeed one of the tasks that we want to contribute to. Deconstructing is a first necessary step to proposing alternative framings that would be by design more equitable, more just, more sustainable, more oriented to the well-being of a large share of humanity. This double exercise of deconstructing on the one hand and reconstructing in a second time is a constitutive dimension of our particular voice on the issue at the Institute, and particularly within the context of the Tech Hub, that is the place at the Institute where we coalesce all the efforts and initiatives at the Institute around the tech transition. We are firm here that we need to go beyond tech for good, tech for peace, towards the idea of good or peace inside, good in tech, good, peace in tech. Third, this implies other models for technology production, but also other models to train and to educate technology producers. This is a third dimension of the voice that we want to carry at the Institute on the technology transition and its stakes and challenges, that actually the producers of technology need to be trained from the start into those issues, whether political, ethical, or governance issues. Fourth, technology has always had an important imprint on our planet, and the contemporary technological transition is having such an impact on a scale that is unique in history. How do we weigh the benefits of more technology versus the associated costs to a finite planet, to our environment, and our limited resources? This is a question that is too rarely asked, but is particularly relevant for technologies like digital and AI, and this is also a question that we explore at the Institute. All those questions apply to the technological transition in general, but also, obviously, to AI in particular, and I have no doubt that they will be explored in the panel discussion that we'll be hearing right now. I would like to thank you all again for being here today, and I'm personally very much looking forward to that discussion. It will be moderated by my colleagues, Akim Venman, who is the Director of Strategic Partnerships at the Institute, and Jérôme Duberry, who is the Director of the Tech Hub at the Institute. Jérôme and Akim, a big thank you to you, and I leave you the floor.
Thank you, Marie-Laure. Dear colleagues, esteemed members of the advisory body, dear students, dear all. Last year, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres launched a high-level advisory body on artificial intelligence to undertake analysis and advance recommendations for the international governance of AI. This interdisciplinary body brings together experts from government, the private sector, civil society, to offer diverse perspectives and options on how to govern AI. They published last December an interim report that is available here at the entrance and online. And further to this interim report, they are conducting a broad consultation. And this is why they are with us today. So this town hall meeting is part of this consultation. I would like to invite on stage our four distinguished speakers and panelists. First, Carme Artigas, co-chair of the advisory body, former Secretary of State for Digitalization and Artificial Intelligence of Spain. In this capacity, Ms. Artigas led Spain's digital agenda, in particular the national strategy on artificial intelligence. We will also have Paolo Benanti, third order regular Franciscan and lecturer at the Pontifical Gregorian University. His research revolves around managing innovation, particularly focusing on the impact of the digital age and artificial intelligence. We will also have Sharad Sharma, who is the co-founder of the iSpirit Foundation, a non-profit technology think tank. He also co-founded Teltier Technologies, a wireless infrastructure startup that is now part of Cisco. Last but not least, we will have Professor Zhang Lingan, professor at the Institute of Data Law, China University of Political Science and Law. Her extensive publications focus on cyberspace law and algorithmic governance. Among many other publications, she published a book entitled Governing Power, Regulation of Algorithms in the Age of Artificial Intelligence. Dear panelists, I invite you to join me on stage. While we welcome our panelists on stage, a few words to tell you a little bit about the event. Thank you very much. Given that this is a town hall meeting, we will dedicate a large part of the event to a discussion, a dialogue with you. So we will come to you and we will have a conversation that will be co-facilitated by my colleague, Dr. Achim Wenman. And towards the end, we will invite our panelists back on stage for a wrap-up and final words. So I will start, maybe to kickstart our conversation, with two questions. The first one is, why should we govern artificial intelligence? Maybe Carme, would you like to start?
Yes, so good afternoon. Thank you so very much. So we're very glad to be here. It's part of all the welcome we have received from Geneva institutions. So very happy to be here and have access to this important institution and be able to share also our thoughts here and also receive feedback and ideas to improve. Thank you so much. So yes, the question of why do we need to govern AI, I think it starts with the realization that artificial intelligence is more than a technology. And therefore, it not only affects production means, economy, vertical sectors, but it is also intertwined in society and in ethical and the way we're going to relate to each other thanks to these technologies. And what we see is that the reason why we need to govern AI is to ensure that everybody can receive both the benefits of accessing of artificial intelligence and what it can mean for our well-being, future health, education, and all the opportunities we have already outlined in the report, but also control the risks and keeping humans on the loop. So the society decides what are the limits and participates in its governance. So what we have done is try to define and identify also that the reason why we need to govern AI at a more international level is because we have identified some existing deficits, both in the governance mechanisms that are in place, but also in the accountability. We have seen in the last, especially in the last year after, I would say, the ChatGPT momentum, that everybody realized that this is something that is even beyond the control of the technology developers. And that all the efforts that we have seen, which are very positive, both from the industry, but also national efforts. I come from Europe, so the AI Act or the G7 Hiroshima process, the GPI and all the other UNESCO, all the other efforts are isolated efforts that can become silos if they are not aligned. So I think one important role is to have a shared vision that we can understand what it means, the opportunities and challenges, and we participate in its governance. And so our approach is a multi-stakeholder approach, universal approach, and we believe that the right place to do that is under United Nations institutions and the international law and human rights chapter, and also sharing some commitments like SDGs. So that was the starting point, and that's the work and the direction we are leading.
Thank you. Mr. Sharma?
To build on what Carme is saying, the urgency or the importance is now visible to us because we missed the boat 2 times earlier. We should have regulated digital way back in the mid-2000s. In fact, some of your colleagues and students may remember a famous book called Code 2.0 by Larry Lessig. Now, Larry is an important person. He helped create the GPL, and therefore the open source movement. And initially, he felt maybe digital doesn't need regulation. But by the time we got to 2006, he had changed his opinion. And he made a very powerful case in that book for why good regulation is necessary. But the cat was out of the bag. People didn't pay attention. And then 10 years later, an opportunity arrived to regulate social media. And that was lost as well. So now I think we are at a very pivotal moment where we have an opportunity to think about what should be the relationship between AI technology and society. What kind of regulations do we need? What kind of protections do we need? What harms do we have to avoid? How to steer it in the right direction? Many of the things that Carme talked about. And many of us in this UNAI body believe that we must not let go of this moment, and we should be third time lucky. So that's really what it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me express, first of all, my gratitude and for the opportunity of being here and have this such confrontation. Well, speaking from an ethical point of view, the first thing is to have some kind of historical inquiries. We have to recognize that when we start to structure our society as a more complex one, so when we make community bigger than 150 elements, we start to build up what we can define a social contract. The social contract is simple, the things that people do stuff in a way that is in some way according to agreement of society. We can have an idea, for example, with the old Roman Empire, when the water pipe, the huge water system, was made according to a social contract for a good and the ability of surviving of people. So there is in society this idea that there are some kind of social rules that simply define how we use technology and how we spread technology for the common goods. We express that in a really clear way every time that we jump in an airplane. We trust of the pilot, we trust of the maintenance, we trust of the air traffic control. And so because AI is simple assistant that will surrogate part of this kind of process, we have to imagine that has to be according to the social contract. But there is another element that is really important that arises in the late 80s in ethics of technology. Because as was told before during the introduction, when 60,000 years ago, when we was in the cave and we took for the first time in a hand a clapstick, it could be a tool or a weapon. But starting from the 80s, we realized that there is a political construction in that kind of form of technology that simply structure themselves as a system. Probably the most and more important example was given by Norbert Wiener, Landon Wiener, that is an ethicist of technology, that simply show like the street process building in New York, in Manhattan, give a really political understanding of what we are doing. So if you look the Parkway, the highway that is connecting Manhattan to Long Island, you see concrete and asphalt. It's not so different from any other highway. But if you read the book about the life of the politicians, Robert Moses, that might make a construction, the book is one of the 100 best non-fictional books in US market, won a Pulitzer Prize, you can discover that Moses has a clear political view of society. The best part of the city has to be for what he believed was the best part of society. And his own mentality, really regrettable, was the white rich middle class. Well, how to keep the wonderful John's Beach, that is the best beach in Long Island, only for white rich middle class? First of all, there is no public transportation system, no train. And the second thing is that the bridge are 2 feet lower than the standard, 66 centimeters. Only the people that can own a car can commute to the beach. So every technological artifact is a displacement of power, is a form of order inside society. The way in which you achieve your service in this digital society is not given by a bridge, only by a bridge, but also by an algorithm that is embedded in some kind of portal behind the screen. We would like to make it compatible with democratic system that we are used to live in. This is the second point. Third and last, in my perspective, come from another element that come with AI. You know, we sometimes develop some kind of technology that we recognize are connected with a form of existential things that we call danger. When we develop oil can take fire, can explode. There is a danger. And we use that kind of danger in a public category that is risk management. So you have to handle oil in a special tank with special procedure and things like that. So AI is connected with some sort of danger. And so we have to develop risk category and handle in a public way. The last time that we developed a machine that is faster of the human beings, cars, to avoid accident between machine and cars, we start to develop a sort of normative rules, that is the code of the street, to avoid that machine and human beings, car and human beings, can have an accident. This is the sense of regulation. Regulation that we are talking about is not to constrain our freedom. It's simple to avoid a sort of accident between human beings and machine. With cars, we developed guardrails. With cars, we developed license plate. With cars, we developed driving license, a set of instruments that try to diminishing the number of accidents between machine and man. So the game is the same, the route is the same. Let's see what happens.
Very nice.
Thank you. I would like to separate AI into two different types. The first is kind of, we call it traditional AI, that we know, like algorithm recommendation, that give you the information and give you the short video. And the other one is the most advanced AI system that we talk about, like ChatGPT, the foundation model with great power. So if it comes to the traditional AI system, I would like to tell a story that in China, there are two top delivery company system. It delivers the food to the customers, and they use the algorithm to push the time very tightly to let the drivers go to a very dangerous way and to save the time to send the food to the customers. So this caused the public attention, and we can see there is no regulatory framework because these drivers, they are not a traditional labor contract. They don't have the labor contract with the companies, and they cannot get the compensation related to the work injuries. So we can see the conflict between the traditional law framework and the new phenomenon of AI cost. So how we can adapt to our legal system to protect this new drivers as a labor as a traditional worker, give them like labor protection. That's why we should govern AI, to protect the vulnerabilities. And the second, if we can see that last year ChatGPT appears, and when it comes to we can generate like text to video, text to picture. If you remember that when the deepfake appears, the first use of it is to make porn. And when the generative AI, the model appears last year, we can see that according to the statistics, the children pornography soared 1,000 times online. So when it comes to why we should govern AI, it means that there are so many people that need protection, and we have to provide some legal protection or other ways to protect them from misusing of AI system. Thank you.
Thank you.
Maybe another question for you. So you told us why we need to govern AI. Maybe now we should ask you how can we govern AI? So can you already give us maybe some kind of governance opportunities that could have an impact? Maybe we could start with you.
Well, the work we've done the first 2 months, it was a very challenging assignment by the Secretary General, was to produce the first interim report when we were trying to explain why and what do we have to govern. And the what was what we call international governance functions that we consider are not well covered by existing roles. And these days we have also have in-depth conversations with existing UN agencies and recognize all the work they do. And the idea is to build on their strengths, but also allow for this alignment, necessary alignment and gaps, and also avoid overlap, because this is a very complex task. And we believe that no one can do it alone, not the private sector alone, not the nations alone. And this is why we were emphasizing these 7 key international governance functions that we have assigned. And the result of the second meeting, in-person meeting in Geneva, is to keep on working on, based on those functions, if we can start proposing some forms, because we wanted to ensure that the functions were clear, and then how, no? So the how is coming. The how is exactly how do we want to organize ourselves, so to build on the existing efforts that are doing internationally from the private sector and also national institutions. But I think that the long-hanging fruit is already there. First of all, everybody's talking about this. Nobody was talking about this 1 year ago. So I think the first long-hanging fruit is that we have put that into the dialogue agenda at a multilateral level. Second low-hanging fruit is we're starting building consensus. We have, through the interim report, built scientific consensus on what are the opportunities, the enablers, the risks, and the challenges. And that's important, because now we are sharing the same view. And when you're sharing the diagnosis, then you can share the solutions. So that's the next step. Also, we have important opportunity to be aware that there is an equality in terms of the outcomes, because not everybody will, if we continue doing nothing, will be able to benefit from the benefits of the opportunities that AI can give to humanity in general. But in order to solve this, we need to assure equality on the access. And the access means that so far, AI is developed by the global north, concentrating in very few companies that have access to computing power, to data, and to talent. And that's the first thing we need to work on. How do we, give equal access, not only in between modern societies, but also on less developed countries. And we expect the immediate hanging fruit will be to set up sort of efforts for capacity building. I think the most important thing is that we provide capacity building so that we can solve these inequalities. And the other probably low-hanging fruit is horizontal scanning. This effort we have done in December, pointing out the opportunities, the barriers, the risks, and necessary guardrails and challenges, needs to be an ongoing effort, that we foresee those opportunities, foresee those risks, and we get and make it a priority.
You must be having a program on responsible AI, I would imagine, right? So the question is, building on the things that Carmen talked about, how do we think about the how? There are 3 places that we can learn from. One, in the last 100 years, we've definitely focused on citizen protections. For example, there many countries, democracies have rules that make sure that all marginalized voters can come and vote, for example, right? Because you want to make sure those citizens have the right to vote, that is not affected. You have a lot of consumer protections. You mentioned aviation safety. Many of us traveled here on a plane, and aviation safety changed actually in 1970s. There's a fundamental shift that took place in aviation safety. Aviation safety till 1970s did not have declining fatalities for every million passenger miles flown. So people went back and say, hey, this is not good enough, because we'll have an explosion of passenger miles flown. And if you don't have a decline in fatalities, then more people will die every year. And then many of us will not like to travel, right? So in 1970, there was an overhaul of aviation safety, the mechanism that underpins aviation safety. And since then, there has been a steady decline in fatalities per million miles flown, although million miles flown has grown. So therefore, every year we don't have more fatalities than before, although, if you see 10 years ago, there were fewer million miles flown than is the case today, right? So the question is, what can we learn from those experiments where consumer safety has been involved? And Amandeep here has been involved in the third type of example, which is societal in nature. And nuclear technology, the threat is neither at the consumer level, nor is it at the citizen level. It doesn't change the balance of power between the citizen and the state, but it definitely has an impact on society, right? So as we look at AI, it is a dangerous technology, because it actually impacts citizen safety, because it can change the way democracy functions, and democracy is at risk, especially when combined with social media. It has an impact on consumer safety, and frankly, it has societal implications that we don't fully understand. So the how part of this is complex. And I'll pick on Paulo's example. It necessarily involves us thinking of new concepts, new mechanisms, new mental models to be able to engage with this issue that we have on hand. Now, if there is time, we can go back and talk about some of those new concepts that are there, but I would just leave it here. Doing more of the same is not the answer, because this is a peculiar situation, and we need to therefore draw on many strands of regulation, different types of regulation that have existed, bring them together, add new things, and only then do we stand a chance of being able to get to the kind of end state that we all like to see.
Thank you very much. It's not so easy after our chair make a so clear expression of our works. And so I take the liberty to deep dive your question in one perspective. So one of the answer to this is not simple hard law or soft law, and I would like to play on this other direction, but is answering with another things that is old as the human being is old, culture. We need culture for do that. Why? Well, first of all, we need culture because we need to understand which processes are ongoing. You cannot govern a not understood process. Just to make you an example, computer power and computational power is one of the engine of this world with data. Computer arise during World War II, Colossus and ENIAC, Bletchley Park and United States, and helped the Allies to win the war. Then in the 50s, in the 60s, this computational power, thanks to the transistor, spread in the huge company and transformed the organizational process in the huge company. Starting from the 70s, this computational power centralized in the form of mainframe start to be disgregated by a cultural movement, the hippie of the Silicon Valley, or the guys at the Redmond, that give us the personal computer. And personal computational power has a so huge social impact that the first number of 1983 of Time Weekly magazine elected the man of the year of 1982 that actually was a machine, personal computer. That personal computer became a laptop. Then, the first decade of this century, we discovered the smartphone. And the smartphone is the personal computational power that live in our pocket. That simple change also our perspective on liberal democracy. After World War II, we was convinced, as we as a Western, that liberal democracy, free market, and well-being could be driven together in the world for a new age of well-being. Is the age of justice, where United Nations arise and flourished. Well, at the end of the last century, when Fukuyama wrote The End of History, we saw that liberal democracy could not be so much attractive in the same sense with the free market. But at the end of the first decade of this century, the Arabic Spring, Simple told us that the digital space could be the best attractor for liberal democracy. We can speak, we can spread the ideas, we can have a new wave of best ally to liberal democracy. The second decades of this century finish with the riots of Capitol Hills, and the digital space is the worst enemy of liberal democracy. What happened in the middle? As was said before, a free space of digital technology unregulated. And the end of the last decades, 2020, the pandemic, show us that we can live in this society without have, social relationships thanks to our personal computational power. With smartphone, we give identity, we move money, we make lecture, we work, we make everything. So we realized that in the second decades of this century, we transform a lot of social process. And I'm saying that to this place, that is a geopolitical studies, in digital process. We dematerialize that. And democracy start to become a computational democracy. Now, in these decades, AI arise. But an AI service is not anymore running in our personal computational power, but run in a new centralized service that we are used to call cloud. But this time is not just a matter of organization inside company, it's a centralization also of all the process that we simply spread in computational democracy. And this is a challenge. We need a culture to see the transformation and to see in the middle of these decades, 2024, 25, what we would like to be at the end of these decades. And it's really important to say that I see here the friends of JESDA that work in that direction, to have a cultural perception of what is coming, to make this kind of transformation a multilateral one. I was really touched yesterday visiting the United Nations campus by the library. The library was the first thing that was established. We need a culture to make multilateralism work in this kind of transformation. So culture is the other element that we have to foster, and has to be an inclusive culture, not one model that forces the other, but be able to have the different model to communicate together and to spring back together for a multi-plural world. So this is one of the challenge. It's not enough the law, it's not enough the hard principle, soft principle. It's really, really important to develop a culture that make them valuable for the generation that living now.
Thank you, thank you. When we talk about govern AI, I think we are not governing AI system. We are governing the people who behind the AI system. So we want to, we need a responsible AI. Actually, we are asking the responsible player who produce and deploy and use the AI system. There are two kinds of approach to govern AI system. The first one is I think, to the traditional AI system is transparency. We want you to disclose many numbers and how did you design the AI system and how does it run, how it runs, so the regulator can see, oh, what bad you have done. So I will tell you, no, you cannot do this. But when it comes to the most advanced AI system, like ChatGPT, like foundation model, it's much powerful than human. So if we do that, it's a little bit difficult because you cannot ask them to disclose all the information the regulator need. And even they disclose, maybe you cannot have the answer whether the people behind AI system do the thing right. So we can see some approach of a regulate AI system like red teaming. It's a kind of I will test you. If you pass the test, so I think you are safe. But here's the thing: we know if a child he learns knowledge very well and he passes the examination, it doesn't mean he necessarily know all the knowledge very, very well. So we still don't know whether the AI system is safety, but it is the compromise we can reach at this moment that you can pass the assessment or the safety test, and then we think you are safety enough. And so when we want to do the test, we can see now we have to develop a standard, a technical standard, just like Professor Shariat said. We need a new mechanism, and we have to face the new challenges. But we can see a trend. I noticed a trend that when we establish and when we draft the technical standards, always we have to put some privacy request into the technical standard. But usually, the privacy request was posed by the law, not the technical standards. So we can imagine who can draft the technical standards. Most scenarios is the most powerful or most advanced company in the world who can set the technical standards. So it will lead to a consequence that maybe one technical standard actually is the universal code for all the AI companies for all over the world. I think we don't want to think to come to this situation like the monogamy of all the technical standards, and we all obey the same standards. Just like Paulo said, we have to respect back the culture diversity, and we have to respect the different historical, different options of different countries. So I think that's what we are here. That's why we are here. We want to talk about how to do the global cooperation, and we can respect every country's choice, and we can do the cooperation of the AI governance globally to develop a mechanism or a system that respecting all the choice and all the mechanisms and the country or the culture or they want to choose, and also we can make sure that the AI system is safety to all. Thank you.
Let me comment on some important ideas that my colleagues have just mentioned, which I think it's important to just emphasize. We talk about two important words: trust and transparency. I think trust is the most important one here, because either we build trust for the society. You mentioned, Father, the social contract. That it seems that it's not working anymore. We need to rebuild social contract. The role of the governments to protect our citizens beyond the geographical barriers, because now geopolitics is cyber, and space politics. Also, the need for transparency from the industry and technology developers. They have lived for the last decades without any constraint, as other industries like car industry or pharmaceutical industry. We were asking them for guardrails before they launch a product in the market with all the security, clinical tests, and we have allowed the software industry just throw up products without any control. And we were the ones just doing the quality control afterwards. And it says, okay, after ChatGPT, this is no longer valid. I cannot have just a black box that is responsible for the best ever scientific discovery like is AlphaFold, and nobody knows how this has been trained or what is the data they use. So I think this need for trust and transparency affects the social contract, affects the consumer relationship with the products, and for that we require institutions that give us the certainty and they are reliable, and not only based on principles and values, which are desirable, but also based on normative alignment, because rights generates accountability. What principles and values is wishful thinking. So I think it's important that we understand that interoperability must be developed at a technical level, but also on the I would say, the risk frameworks, the taxonomies, and on legislative alignments. And we are seeing that, of course, there are different efforts from different geographies, but we must align these common grounds. And as you mentioned also on this need for new concepts, new principles, because we cannot have different results doing the same things the same way. So we need to start thinking in a different way to have different results, because the challenges are huge.
Thank you. Talking about new ways and different ways of thinking, I would like to give the floor to my colleague, Achim Windman.
Thank you very much. And I'm Achim Windman, I'm the Director for Strategic Partnerships, and as a big part of my job is to make people speak, this is what I'm going to try now. Because on the one hand, you have now fired up the room, but many in the room could sit equally in your chairs because they're experts in their own right. And what we thought to do is to make all of the expert panel members work. not in terms of that you share what you have, but you listen to the kind of messages that you take back home. This is an interim report. This is the time for all of you to have all expert panel members have your ideas heard. Make your observation, your critical reflections, make it stick to them. And in order to stick it to them, you need to stick it to them. So you need to find them. This is why I would like all the expert members, please rise, which are in the room. Don't hide. I know there are a few over there. Just rise, stand up. No, stand up. No? All of the expert members, I tactically positioned you somewhere in the room. So if I could invite you, both of you, to go into the left top corner, because there is an absence of expert members. And I invite both of you to go into this top corner. No? And now that you know all the expert members, I'd like you, all who are sitting, to stand up and go towards one of the expert members and form groups and just ask questions or stick to them some things. You have 10 minutes for that. And after that, Jérôme and I, we're going to come by your mini discussion groups and we're going to have a conversation. And please, if I say after 10 minutes you have to stop talking, please stop talking. So, let's go. And all of the expert members, now raise your hands so that people can still recognize you. 10 minutes. And there's no artificial intelligence 10 minutes. Huh? There is one more here. There is one more right here. He's hiding. Please. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm now going to be the conversation, the party pooper, and stop the conversations. Can I please just perhaps stay within your groups where you are? Just stay where you are, because we're going to come. You can, of course, sit in around where you are. But we want to now start the conversation. I need help over there to stop the conversation. Jérôme. Just stop the conversation now. Ladies and gentlemen, we want to start right here. You are an expert panel member. We have not met you yet. I'm going to sit next to you. And who are you?
Hi, I'm Vanina Martinez. I'm a researcher in AI for the Spanish National Research Council. And so I'm a technical person.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And I'm not going to ask you, but the first thing, did they do a good job to challenge you?
Yes.
Yes, excellent. So I know that we have a fantastic students in front of you who are great and challenging. What was your questions, or what was your conversation about?
So we actually...
Who are you?
Hi, my name is Brian Massioni. I'm a first-year student here at the Graduate Institute. The three of us did not have a chance to contribute yet, but I do have a question for you. The three of us are actually working on a project involving digital and emerging technologies. And there's been a lot of criticism within the field of AI that, and one of our colleagues mentioned that we've missed the boat twice. One of them was with social media. What would be your criticism on how we've been able to govern AI so far? Should we be focusing on governance during innovation, focusing it more on after we've developed the technology, or should we try to get ahead of what we think is coming and develop some guidelines prior to the emergence of that technology?
Is it all of the above? It's hard, but I think that we can't just focus on one of these parts alone if you really want to do a good job, right? So if we have to think of governance and regulation of AI throughout the whole life cycle of the systems, and that starts when there is someone that has the idea of implementing or developing or using an AI system, through all the way to where the results from those systems are applied in our daily lives or our jobs or decision makings that are made for us. So it is a lot. We were just at the very end where there was this question is like, so regulation should focus on the development of models of AI or more on the application side. And the impression of, I don't know who yesterday, is that there is too much focus on the application, on the products, and not on the rest of the cycle, and I agree with that. So our view of what it should be done is throughout the whole life cycle. Okay.
Jerome, over to you.
Building on this question of regulation, we've had an interesting conversation here around techno-legal regulation. Do you want to tell us a little bit about it?
Sure. So the idea is very simple. Purpose of regulation is to ensure good behavior of market actors, right? And traditionally, we've focused on doing that by making good public policy and putting that into effect. And in many cases, that works. But imagine for a moment in this city, there were no traffic lights, and you had only human traffic wardens. Would the traffic flow as well as it does today? No, because you had to invent a technical method of also regulating the traffic. Now, clearly we know from this example of the digital world that we got to use public technology and public policy coming together to be able to ensure that the market actors behave properly. The danger is that if we don't do this, then the only argument that we have is let's have very few market actors. In fact, this is an argument being made by the monopolies that exist. The monopolies that exist, it's saying is regulation is really very hard. So it's in your interest, society, to have very few people to regulate. But if you have very few people to regulate, then you won't have choice. You know, we will only be served well by AI if we have fireflies lighting up the sky. We have thousands of AI models to choose from, not dozens, and not if there are just a handful. Right? So this is our dilemma. And for some reason, you know, I'm going to get pot shots for this, and I'm known to be very blunt, that the resistance to this idea, surprisingly, is not even the US. US is generally resistant to any regulation. You know that, right? But they surprisingly embrace the techno-legal form of regulation. Why do they do that? Because they say techno-legal regulation can give you high compliance and high convenience to comply. So they like that idea. You know where it is resisted the most? Europe. Because you invested all your energy in just pure regulation of the digital world, you know, in the digital commissioner, Margaret Vestager, who herself has got converted to this idea of techno-legal regulation. And she speaks about it, especially in the last year and 18 months. But surprisingly, when you talk to generally folks, policymakers in Europe, it hasn't percolated down to the elites, the intelligentsia, to adopt this idea, because there's so much of resistance to anything technological. There's the sense that if you use technology is so corrupt, it is bad, how can we use it for regulation also? But the only answer to digital regulation and AI regulation is actually to use techno-legal regulation. So I'll give you quick ideas about this. So first, GDPR, a great idea. Has it been successful? How many of you think it's a great success? All right. You know, I'll tell you, people who run this, generally what it has done is raise the barrier for conforming with this regulation so that all your small companies have been eliminated. Only big American companies can afford to comply with this. Innovation has been affected. And this is why now you have some countries like France particularly coming back and say we need to look for a different balance between regulation and compliance, right? Because they have suffered. Have consumers won because of GDPR? When was the last time you did not click on the button which said all? Right? Very few people have benefited from this. It is, to me, an example of failure. But there is an example, counter-example of success, where electronic consent in a digital system has been used using a protocol called DEPA at a scale similar to what is the case now in GDPR, and it seems to be working much better. Take another example, identity. Identity can be dystopian. Identity can also be utopian. What determines that? Does identity change the balance of power between the citizen and the state? If the balance of power is in the hand of the state, and the state therefore knows everything that I am doing, is that good for democracy? No. Could you, however, think of digital identity in a way that the balance of power shifts in the favor of the citizen? Yes. But now, this is the conversation that we need to have. Because for all of these things, there is a good way of doing it, there is a bad way of doing it. Not just as a market player. Of course, there's a good way for a market player, for a pharma company to make good medicine and not so good medicine, a good vaccine and a not so good vaccine. We know that, right? But the question is, for regulators, there are two ways that have emerged. The old way, and then a techno-legal way. And I think there is a discussion, especially in a place like this, where there are thought leaders, where you're helping design the future for you to embrace some of these ideas like techno-legal regulation. Now, they don't travel alone. There are a couple of other ideas that go with it, right? One of them is liability chains. If we have time, we can talk about that. But the third one also is complex adaptive systems. So one of our, I was telling, the people who were there, one of our body members, AI body members, is Professor Dame Wendy Hall. Some of you may know her because she's one of the creators of Web 1.0. And if you go and ask her and Tim Berners-Lee, did they want the web that emerged? You know they didn't want it. Web 2.0 is the antithesis of what Web 1.0 was. And do you know what changed it? Did anybody here get a 404 error? How many of you have got a 404 error? All right. How many of you got a 402 error? Nobody. But there is a provision for a 402 error. You know what that error is? Micropayment failed. Because in the conception of Tim Berners-Lee and Wendy Hall and others, their understanding was that when web makes content available, the content provider can choose to provide it free or can charge a micropayment for it. Right? Now, this is a bigger discussion as to why that micropayment didn't happen. Many people believe it's because of the same reason that you don't have public transportation in the US, which is that the car companies bought public transportation and ripped it out in many cities. So many people blame Visa and MasterCard for it. I'm not in that camp. I think there were other factors that happened, but there is a belief that that was the case. You never built a micropayment system. So therefore, the web ended up going for what is now called, Ethan Zuckerberg famously called it, the original sin. You know what the original sin is? The advertising model. That is what has created this surveillance system. This has created the AI problem that we have today. So small changes can have very big effects in this world, which is the very principle of complex adaptive systems. And so therefore, for us to sit here and say, we know what it will be like 10 years, 20 years from now, is not realistic at all. So if we have to regulate, we have to regulate on the principles of complex adaptive system. Do we do that somewhere? Do you know where do we do this? Can you give me an example? Forest fires. Can you give me another example? Stock market. So we have lived examples of where some of these principles have been applied. And we got to bring that into AI design, because it can't be old traditional model and more of the same, because that's not going to work. The last one, which I briefly mentioned, is liability chains. That I'll come back to if there is time, because otherwise I'll be monopolizing everybody's time. Thank you.
Now, right? I'm coming to it. If you talk about all this in just 10 minutes, that was really an effective 10 minutes. Excellent. One more quick question, then we come back here.
Okay, thank you. My name is Christine Housel. I'm representing Ethic Minds Institute. So coming from the education and NGO world, my background is in philosophy and theology. Our group had a robust discussion about many things, and I think on behalf of us, we'd like to appreciate the methodology and really the invitation, because it's the invitation for challenge brought us to wrestling together. And unafraid to go into the tough questions, recognizing the urgency. So we got into questions about humanity. We're kind of agreeing on a human-centered approach, but going deeper into what that really means, and what are the implications, and how do we lift up what is uniquely human as a part of the conversation more intentionally. Mr. Amandeep, from the Zurich summit, I asked you something about how we as civil society can more robustly, come in and support. And so I think leading into decision making, we propose more spaces like this where we can continue to go into the complexity. And then the question also is assuming the best possible outcome. In this document, the whole process is raising questions about the whole system. The whole multilateral system, the whole way we work. And so how can we work together to implement, the best of what we come up with together from civil society? And can we together, really put into the plan points of going in and going out, ways of really feeling confident that we can achieve something. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. There was an immediate two-finger coming up from you, I think.
Thank you. My name is Yi from Chinese Academy of Sciences. I'm also in the advisory body. So I like the question from the student saying that do we really need to wait until the technology itself to be more advanced to regulate? I would like to say it was because this kind of question that confuse you from the technology side, that questions raised by, like this is always from the technology side. Me, myself, I'm a technical researcher myself. So for the industries and professors from AI, like me, they will say, oh, we need more opportunities, to let alone, the privacy. We just wait for a while until it's developed. What I wanted to say here is that AI governance never postpone the opportunities for AI to develop. Actually, when without governance, what you have is actually AI to have wild growing instead of healthy development. What we need is really healthy development of AI instead of wild growing of AI. So without regulation, we will have wild growing, which we never need. So everybody from the technical side, people like me working on AI, people say making AI everywhere. No, we don't need AI everywhere. It's a human society. It's an ecological society. We don't need AI everywhere. So we need to use AI proportionally. We need to, and now AI pretend to be intelligent. Well, they're not. They're without real understanding. So people were saying natural language processing. They never say natural language understanding. There's a reason for that. So now it can say statistics shows, but never believe them when they say, I think, I suppose, I guess. When I would suggest you, like our discussion right there, when you ask the AI, I got so sad because I don't really have a girlfriend. My mother hates me. I don't have any friends. What should I do? And then dialogue system will tell you, I guess and I suggest that you could die, because most people meeting these characteristics, some of them die. Statistics shows they would die. But for a machine, they never understand what does it mean by love? What does it mean by life? Thank you.
And as a moderator, I know what's the end of time. Thank you. Thank you so much. We had a very animated discussion right here. So let me ask you, how did they challenge you? What were the topics? And then also, please, members of the discussion group, do come in. And who are you?
Yeah, so my name is Abeba Brohani. I'm from Ethiopia. I currently work in Dublin as adjunct assistant professor in Trinity College Dublin. I also work at Mozilla Foundation as a senior advisor in AI accountability. And by now, as you have figured it out, the body is composed of really genuinely diverse members, consisting of, people from technical backgrounds, people from civil society, people from, philanthropic organizations, law, regulation, and so on. And my background, or rather my expertise and my contribution to the body is I work on a field known as evaluation and audits of training data sets that's used for AI models and evaluation of models themselves. And I'm sure you've heard by now so many times again and again about the benefits and risks and benefits and harms of AI. But what you don't most often hear is how benefits and harms are distributed unevenly. So if you look at, from the social media platforms to recommender systems such as that of YouTube's, to the latest state-of-the-art generative models such as, OpenAI's Sora, which is the latest one that can give you, a snapshot of videos based on prompt text inputs. They all have drawbacks, they all have limitations, they all have failures, they all have vulnerabilities, despite a lot of the media reporting that presents these systems as godlike, as like perfect, as magic that can do everything. But the reality is these systems always have issues, and when these systems fail, when they have issues, identities, communities, groups that tend to be negatively impacted by these are people that are at the margins of society. So, for example, even the past few weeks, we've seen so many research highlighting like generative models that are used for hiring can recommend, high-paying jobs for, privileged identities in society, whereas the less privileged you are, the job options that these systems recommend tend to be like housekeeping, cleaning, and so on. So there is bias all the way through, no matter what use case, no matter what application you look at.
How did they challenge you?
So they were.
There are a couple of managers in the group.
Yes, they had very good questions. So we were discussing my own work, which is dataset audits. So the challenge were, how do you actually perform audits, and if there are any standard or scientific methods. What other challenges did you raise?
We wanted to push it further to recognizing the scale of adoption across all sorts of industries and government departments of using these technologies, presumably for very useful purposes. The need for transparency and accountability, core governance concepts, how to scale up your sort of capability, the audit, the monitoring, evaluation capability, to keep up with adoption. And should, for example, standardization certification systems for audit functions be useful or not? How do you deal with the conflicts of interest what you would get amongst auditors who are doing it for money and getting hired to give a good result, of course, to whoever hires them? These are typical sorts of challenges we've seen in many industries where you're using audit, but how to get good governance is going to have to struggle with some of these very precise, practical sorts of issues. Yeah, is that right?
Thank you. Yes. Thank you. We're shortly running out of time. A quick entry here. Then I pass over to you for one final round on your end. And then, but please.
Thank you so much. My name is Nanya Sudhir. I'm at the ILO. I just have a quick question to, I guess, everybody on the panel in general, on the body. And it's just that in Geneva, we talk a lot about governance, and I think most of us are on the same page that, yes, we need governance and we need good governance. But the question is specifically for AI, how would you convince those who believe that we don't need governance, and what are some strategies that have worked, that you've seen to work? Thanks.
Okay. Perhaps we have that question. For you, Amandeep, you get the final round at the very end. You can take just a pre-warning. So keep that question. Over to you.
Thank you. My group simple disappeared here, but there was two main topics. One was how to be inclusive with difference and how to avoid that AI could become a form of new colonialism. First, we extract from the global south the resources, then the workforce. Now we could extract cognitive capabilities. So this is one of the first main topic. The second one was what does it mean to have an ethics? Is not ethics something that is against universal principle? And we recognize that there is something like ethical norms that could be really cultural dependent, but there is something else that is the first form of rational ethics that are used to be called virtues. And if I ask to you, would you like to have an AI that is just or unjust? What do you prefer? Well, this is the universal ethics that we are looking for.
Thank you.
Then we have
Emma.
Emma, we've been pointed out that you have plenty of things to say.
Am I supposed to respond to the question or to talk about the group? Amandeep?
As a moderator, say do both.
Okay. The group asked me, so I'm from South Africa. I'm a philosopher of science. I work in machine ethics and AI ethics. The group asked particularly a little bit first on the working around the UNESCO recommendation on the ethics of AI, because I also worked on that. And then they asked about why it is that we need international, or why I think that we need international governance of AI. They look fairly benign, so I think I might have convinced them. I don't know, but they can tell you what I said. I think it's better if it comes from them. In terms of the question, there's a part of me that wants to say it's not our job to convince people that we have to regulate, because there is a bottom line. We have international law. We have human rights law. These are the rule of law. These are mechanisms that manage humanity. Well, we can ask how successfully. Look around you. The world is in not a very good place. We are maybe not the best beings to be ruling this world. We're not making a very big success of it at the moment. So on the one hand, I want to say, well, that's just how it is. But on the other hand, I think what is really important is that we have to understand that we see it in terms of climate change, how little time we have to try and get things right. But we also see it in terms of AI. We have a very little small window of opportunity to protect what it means to be human. Yes, it's a philosophical question whether it's worthwhile to protect what it is to be human, but it's up to young people to make sure that it is. And that's a conversation for another time. But we have very little time to do this. And here is a technology that might, I will not say can, that might help us to reach some of these goals. If you think in terms of the sustainability development goals, it might help us if we do it in the right way. Why is it important to say that we have little time? Regulation ensures sustainable AI technology. That's what we want. We do not want AI technology that can blow up in our faces. We do not have time for all the court cases and all the Sam Altmans taking the floor and the Elon Musks entertaining us. There is no time for that. What we need is young people that engage responsibly with this technology to ensure that we use it to the benefit of everybody. And the way in which to do that is to do it in a responsible way. And that means that we need governance. We need international governance to ensure that there is some oversight and there is a place where people can come to for sharing of best practice. But we do not need a one-size-fits-all. We have bottom lines, international law, we have certain bottom lines, but we also need it to come from the bottom. We need it to come from the young people as well.
So thank you very much. Thank you all. It's time for us to wrap up. But before we do that, maybe Amandip, you have a couple of words to share with us.
Thank you very much. And it's a delight to be back at the Institute and particularly to see the students in the room. I have very, very happy memories of my 3 years here, and a lot that happened between the release of the high-level panel on digital cooperation report and what's happening now, that maturation of thinking, the experimentation in the AI and SDG space. So that's coming in very handy today. So just want to say a big, big thank you to the Graduate Institute, personally, professionally. And you've heard the advisory body members. So it's an incredible group, women majority group. So 20 women, 19 men from all 5 regions of the world, across all disciplines you can imagine, and multidisciplinarity is a strength of the Graduate Institute. And this advisory body reflects that strength. And the group is diverse, they debate, they argue, but they are strongly committed to their mission. So the Secretary General is very grateful to them for all the effort that they are putting in. This is a voluntary effort. So, and some of them are very, very busy people. And some of them haven't spoken today. Jan, I'm looking at you. Mohammed, Petri, so they run, and back there, Stella, Raymond, Anna. So very grateful to them. And this visit to Geneva has been very useful for us, connecting with the digital ecosystem in Geneva, but not only. And so we have colleagues from ILO, WHO, etc. An important aspect of AI governance is going to be sectoral. So that this visit has allowed us to appreciate those governance challenges. And we have done some work internally over the last 2 days, looking at how to translate some of the ideas in the interim report on functions, these essential functions of international governance that can't be performed at the national level or by the industry by way of self-regulation. So how to translate those functions into institutional forms so that, looking at Sharad, because he keeps challenging us, you can't solve this problem with the mindsets, the frameworks of yesterday. He's very fond of quoting E.O. Wilson, that you have these Paleolithic minds, medieval institutions, and godlike technology. So godlike technology, we can't deal with it with our existing ways, but we can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. So how do we build on what's already there and then renew our mindsets, refresh our approaches? And so we are looking forward to the final report in the context of the Summit of the Future in September 2024, where we kind of renew our vows. Some of you who are married, there's this thing about renewal of vows. I think we need to renew our vows with multilateralism. So that's the SG's vision, and the member states have unanimously decided to hold a Summit of the Future, looking at peace and security, the deficit on sustainable development goals, financing for development, the aspects related to emerging technologies, and digital is very much there on the agenda, the future generations. So the role that youth should play in multilateralism and the future of multilateralism itself. So it's a compact, comprehensive, cross-cutting agenda, and the advisory body's work is a critical piece, critical input into the digital track. So grateful for this opportunity for us to connect with, through a town hall, with the diverse community that you bring together here. Thank you.
Hello, listeners. I'm Dan Graham, Head of Communications at the Geneva Graduate Institute. As we delve into the complexities of global issues, I'd like to introduce you to another series that offers a deeper dive into key global issues. It's called What Matters Today, and it's produced by the same team that brings you this podcast. In What Matters Today, I, along with guest hosts, ask our faculty to provide their expert commentary on pressing global matters. From dissecting international relations to addressing development challenges, What Matters Today offers scholarly insights that complement our event discussions. If you're eager to broaden your understanding of global affairs and hear from academic experts, I encourage you to give What Matters Today a listen. You can find it on all major podcast platforms. Subscribe now to enrich your perspective beyond our event recordings.
This podcast series is produced by the Geneva Graduate Institute. Follow us on your favorite podcast platform to stay updated on our latest episodes and to keep the conversation going. For more information about the Institute or to join one of our live events, please visit our website at graduateinstitute.ch.